So we've made our dabbers, we've assembled our materials, and now we are going to carry on to the next step, which is inking up the actual plate. I'm going to ink up two plates today because there are two kind of different ways of doing a la Poupee. I'm going to ink one plate, which is my feather and fin, because it has very detailed areas in color, and I'm going to ink up a second plate, the poetry, because it's done in what I call at least a rainbow inking, where you put on the different colors and then you kind of blend them on the plate. So let's start with the feather and fin. We're going to have a look at what colors that we need. I use a brown base coat, which is basically just burnt sienna. We need a green for the mountains. We need a bright blue for the actual bird. When the inks come out of the tube, they can be quite stiff. Stiff means that they're very viscous and they can need a little bit of oil. Something that you're going to have to watch when you mix the oil is not too much. A drop goes a long, long way. Only put out a little bit of ink on your mixing palette. Now I use a piece of thick glass, but actually you can kind of use anything that you can wipe off afterwards and that's not absorbent, obviously. An old tile, an old big white tile, piece of marble, up to you, whatever. We need a bit of pink, geranium red, we need a bit of purple. I already have that out on my palette here, and we need a little bit of black. Actually, I don't use black, I use Payne's grey. Simply because there is a multitude of blacks, and not all of them are always available in all the shops. And Payne's grey gives you a nice, soft kind of grey. So that's become my natural choice. Okay, let's start with putting on the base coat. My way of doing it is to use a big dabber to put it on. But as I told you, you can also use a scraper. So let's do it half and half. Bit of ink on the scraper, and you just pull it along the plate, making the ink, forcing the ink into the plate, into the lines on the plate. Or dip your dabber into the ink and in circular motions you go over the plate. This is going to make us a bit seasick, this table, isn't it? Anyway, the whole thing here is to actually, you really have to make sure that you force the ink into every single line. If you don't get the ink into the line, it's going to print white. So you go over, and you go over a bit more, and you go over a bit more. Even on a big plate where I do tend to use a scraper, I always go over it with the dabber, just to make sure. I mean, you can imagine some of my bigger plates will take me over an hour to ink up. Hang on, this table is a bit rocky. I think I'm going to have to move these bottles off, nothing else, because they also make me a bit seasick. We put the brown ink, we put the base color onto the plate now. We've used the dabber and we've also used the scraper to show you both ways. The important thing here is to really, really work that ink totally into your line. Take a big piece of talatana, clean, something you've used before. I'll show you later how to clean off the talatana so it lasts longer. If your piece of talatana is new, it'll have quite a lot of stiffener in it, starch. You know that old-fashioned stuff they used for shirt collars back in the whatever. Anyway, so you just soften it up a little bit. To wipe the plate, you want a nice big fluffy cloud of talatana. You are not wiping your kitchen table, okay? You're letting the talatana take the ink off. All you're doing here is removing excess ink. Have a look when you watch the film again and see how much ink I put on. One of the most common things when I do courses is that people who have not done printmaking before, they tend to lash on the ink and it makes a hell of a mess, and it's really, really tricky. Ink is sticky, gets everywhere, makes you your manicurist's best friend. So think like this, you can always put on a little bit more, but it's a lot of work to take off too much. We get down to where it actually almost looks as if there isn't any ink left on the plate. This is plenty of ink. Make a nice brown background like you see there. Now we're going to go on to the actually putting the colors onto the plate. In part 3, I show you how to add color to the plate.